They thought she would fold under pressure. They waited for her to fail before she even touched the chalk. But none of them were ready for what Maya Reed was about to do. Not her classmates, not the professors, not even the one who challenged her on purpose. This wasn't going to be a normal day in a math building. Something was about to shift. Something people would talk about long after the class ended. And it would all start with one girl walking into a room that was never designed to welcome her. Maya Reed pushed open the door to Hawthorne University's largest lecture hall. Her hand tightened around her backpack strap as a cold wave of silence washed through the space. The room stretched wide, with tall windows letting in pale morning light. Long wooden rows curved upward toward the back. A giant board took up half the front wall, stained with years of chalk dust. Everything about this place felt heavy, like the walls remembered every student who had fallen short here. Maya had walked into rooms like this her entire life. Rooms where people studied her first before studying her work. Rooms where whispers followed her steps even when her shoes made no sound. Most days she ignored it, but today the pressure sat on her shoulders in a way she couldn't quite shake. She made her way to a seat near the front. Her notebook fell open with a soft thud. Around her the quiet grew sharper. Some students mumbled to each other. Some looked up and then quickly looked away. Some stared openly, waiting for something they couldn't name. Then the door at the side of the room opened. Professor Grant Turner walked in with the contained confidence of someone used to having every eye follow him. He wore a dark vest, neat slacks, and a sharp expression that never softened. People said he was brilliant. People also said he was merciless. A man who believed pressure created diamonds. But he forgot that pressure also revealed cracks. He placed his binder on the desk without a sound. His gaze moved across the rows like a scan. Designer jackets, buttoned shirts, expensive laptops. Then his eyes landed on Maya. The pause was slight but unmistakable. A slow tightening of his jaw. A flicker of something unreadable. The kind of look that said he had already decided what she could or could not do. "Miss Reed," he said, stretching her name as if trying to understand how it fit in this room. "Why don't you come to the board for us?" There were no instructions, no context, no warm-up, just a challenge. A quiet stir moved through the class. Not just the usual shifting of bodies. It was sharper, interested, waiting. Maya felt dozens of eyes press against her. She stood, steady and slow, refusing to show even a hint of nerves. She walked toward the board with calm steps that didn't match the tight coil in her chest. Grant handed her a piece of chalk. He gave her a stare that felt more like a test than an invitation. Then he stepped aside. The problem written on the board was intentionally difficult. A layered multi-variable function packed with traps and shortcuts disguised as dead ends. Anyone could attempt it. Few could solve it under pressure. Even fewer could solve it perfectly. Behind her, someone whispered, "She's going to freeze." Another voice added, "She probably doesn't even know where to begin." She tuned them out. Numbers had always made sense to her in a way people rarely did. The tension in the room didn't scare her. What scared her was how predictable it had all become. The doubt, the reactions, the surprise whenever she showed what she could do. She took a slow breath and touched the chalk to the board. The room softened into near silence. Paper stilled. Pens stopped tapping. Not even a cough broke the quiet. It was as if the entire hall leaned forward at once. Maya began writing. Steady, precise, not a single line wasted. Anyone else might have taken a long route. The route that teachers insisted was the proper way. But Maya could see the heart of the problem already. She saw the unnecessary parts that could be removed. She saw a path shorter and cleaner. Grant watched her with folded arms, expression unreadable but intense. He seemed prepared for her to make a mistake so he could correct her publicly. He waited for hesitation. He waited for fear. But Maya kept writing. Halfway through she paused. Not because she doubted herself, because she had learned to check her work twice. People checked her work more than anyone else. So she made sure there was nothing for them to question. The whispers faded. The doubtful glances turned sharper. Students leaned forward, shifting in their seats, try to follow her steps. The equation started to break open under her hand, falling neatly into place. A sharp breath came from somewhere behind her. She's actually solving it. Another voice added, quieter but stunned, and fast. Grant straightened. Make sure you aren't skipping critical steps, Miss Reed. Maya didn't turn. She didn't stop. She simply said, I'm not. A quiet ripple spread through the room. Not amusement. Not disrespect. Something more like surprise. She reached the final step. Wrote the answer. Boxed it. Set the chalk down. The silence grew heavier. Grant stepped toward the board. He didn't comment. Instead, he traced each line with his eyes. Then again. Then one more time. He wasn't checking for confirmation. He was searching for a mistake. Maya watched him calmly. Arms crossed. Breathing steady. After what felt like a full minute, another voice spoke from the back of the room. That was excellent, said Professor Lily Moore, rising from her seat. Her tone was calm, but carried more weight than anything Grant had said so far. She walked toward the board, eyes bright with genuine interest. And Maya felt the room shift. Not completely, not securely, but enough for the truth to take root. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She wasn't here to prove her worth to people who had never given her a chance. But today something was different. She had their attention, and she wasn't about to let it go. Grant's expression tightened as Professor Lily Moore approached the front of the room. Students watched her with the kind of attention reserved for moments when something important was unfolding. She wasn't just another faculty member. She had a reputation for spotting brilliance before anyone else recognized it. Lily studied Maya's work with a steady gaze, tracing through each step almost like she was reading a well-written sentence. Her eyes moved calmly, confidently, without the suspicion Grant had shown. This is more than correct, she said. Her voice was warm, but firm enough to reach the back row. She solved it in a way that shows she understands the structure of the function, not just the technique. A wave of murmurs moved across the room. This time it didn't sound like doubt. It sounded like interest, curiosity, a shift in perception beginning to crack the old assumptions. Grant cleared his throat sharply. He wasn't ready for the room to slip out of his grip. He turned to the board again, staring at Maya's solution with a tight jaw. His pride wasn't built on acknowledging what he hadn't predicted. It was built on being the center of authority. He picked up a fresh stick of chalk. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, he said, keeping his voice steady, but not able to hide the edge creeping in. There may be a shortcut she took without understanding the risks. His back was turned, but everyone could hear what he was really saying. He wasn't questioning the answer. He was questioning her right to reach it the way she did. He circled one part of her solution. Miss Reed, he said, why did you bypass the standard expansion here and jump directly to this transformation? Most students would never take that step unless they were unsure. It wasn't a question. It was bait. Maya felt dozens of eyes shift toward her, some waiting for her to defend herself, some hoping she wouldn't flinch, some wondering if she really knew something they didn't. She kept her posture steady, because she knew exactly what was happening. He was trying to reframe the moment, so the credit stayed in his hands, not hers. Because the expansion creates unnecessary terms, Maya said. It slows down the solution without changing the answer. Recognizing the pattern early removes the extra steps. A few pens hit notebooks at the same time. Some students started copying down her approach, realizing they had been doing it the longer way without questioning why. Grant raised his eyebrows. And what if skipping steps leads you to overlook a detail? What if the pattern you saw was misleading? It wasn't, Maya said. A small laugh slipped out from one corner of the room. Not mocking, amused, admiring. Someone had finally said out loud what most students never dare to say to Grant Turner. Lily brushed a piece of chalk dust off the board. She's right, she said. Her reasoning is clean. Her transitions are consistent. And her shortcut is valid. Grant stiffened at her words. His authority wasn't being replaced, but it was being challenged by someone he respected, and by a student he hadn't expected to be anything more than ordinary. He stepped aside without comment. Then he wrote an even more complicated equation beneath the first. More variables, more traps, a problem that had defeated half of last year's top students. If your method is reliable, Grant said quietly, show us again. He didn't need to raise his voice. The challenge hit the room harder than shouting ever could. Students leaned in. Chairs creaked. Not a single person looked away. Maya stepped toward the board without hesitating. She took in a new problem. It was far more aggressive than the first, designed not just to test skill, but to test composure. This time, she didn't feel the tightness in her chest. She felt something sharper, something steadier, a clarity that came from knowing the entire room was watching her for a new reason. Not to see her slip, but to see what she could do. She lifted the chalk and began. Her movements were fluid, her writing clear, lines forming faster than before, patterns opening in her mind before they appeared on the board. The students behind her whispered again, but very differently this time. How is she seeing that? Wait, I didn't even know you could combine those terms. Is that a shortcut, or is that a whole new method? One student leaned so far forward he nearly fell out of his chair. 5 minutes passed. 10. The board filled with careful transitions, small side calculations, and confident choices. Grant didn't interrupt. He didn't fold his arms or pace like he usually did when waiting for someone to fail. He just watched, silent, focused, almost unsettled. When Maya reached the final line, she set the chalk down gently. "That's the answer," she said. The room didn't breathe for a moment, not because they doubted her, but because the shift felt too big to process all at once. Lily stepped forward before Grant could speak. She checked the line, then another, then all of them. "This isn't just accurate," Lily said softly. "This is exceptional." Students exchanged stunned looks. Some whispered to themselves. Some stared at Maya, as if seeing her for the first time. Grant Turner stood frozen. His authority had been built on the idea that he always saw greatness coming, that nothing slipped past him, that he decided who thrived in his classroom. But Maya had just rewritten that rule without asking for permission. She had taken control of the moment in a way he couldn't reclaim. And for the first time, the students weren't waiting for his approval. They were waiting for hers. The energy in the room didn't just shift. It cracked open, and something entirely new began forming in the space between Maya and every person watching her. It wasn't admiration yet, not fully, but it was the beginning of respect, a kind of respect that couldn't be forced, only earned, and Maya had earned it in front of the entire hall. Lily stepped back from the board, her eyes still fixed on Maya's work, as if she were replaying the solution line by line inside her mind. The class had gone so still that every breath sounded louder than it should. For a moment, the room felt different. Lighter for some, heavier for others, but undeniably changed. Grant Turner finally moved. A small shift of his shoulders, a tightening of his grip around the chalk still in his hand. It was the kind of reaction people had when they realized control was slipping through their fingers faster than they could tighten their hold. He tried to speak with the same steady tone he always used. "Well," he said, "Miss Reed certainly has an unusual approach. Unique, yes, but unique is not always. Advanced," Lily interrupted. Her voice wasn't raised, but it was strong enough to cut right through his sentence. She didn't guess. She didn't rush. She saw the deeper structure of the equation and built from that. This isn't improvisation. It's mastery. Grant blinked. Just once. Small. Fast. But the class noticed. Because for the first time, the two professors weren't standing on the same side of the moment. One was trying to hold on to control. The other was ready to give credit where it was due. The students felt that tension. They watched it unfold like another equation at the front of the room, one with no obvious solution and no shortcuts. Grant set the chalk down with a sharp tap. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well," he said again, "we'll see how she performs when the exam arrives." Maya didn't look away, not out of defiance, out of understanding. The message beneath his words was clear. She had passed his test today, but he wasn't finished. People like him rarely were. The class began gathering their things, but something new was happening. Students weren't rushing out. They weren't ignoring her like they had before. They were looking, studying her the same way she had been studying numbers for years. A few whispers traveled across the room, but they weren't the cold ones she heard earlier. How did she spot that pattern that fast? That method was cleaner than anything he showed us. I need to look up whatever she did. That shortcut was wild. One student, the same one who had doubted her the loudest earlier, approached her desk hesitantly. He looked like someone who wasn't used to swallowing pride. "Hey," he said quietly. That was seriously impressive. Maya closed her notebook without rushing. "I know," she said. He blinked, confused by her calm tone, then let out a laugh. "All right then. Fair enough." Maya stood and slung her backpack over her shoulder. Her steps were steady as she moved toward the door. But something in her stride felt different from when she'd walked into the room. Not lighter, not heavier, just stronger. She stepped into the hallway where the noise of students passing by filled the air. Her phone buzzed. A message from her friend, Joy. "Joy, how was Turner's class? Survive?" Maya smirked, typing back as she walked. "Maya, same old, except I turned one of his tricks back on him." The typing bubble on the screen appeared almost instantly. "Joy, wait, what did you do?" Maya paused, thinking of how to explain everything in one sentence. Then she wrote, "Maya, he tried to embarrass me. He ended up embarrassing himself." Joy's reply popped up fast. "Joy, good. That man has been terrorizing people for years. You should have seen his face. I bet it cracked." Maya laughed under her breath. But she knew this wasn't the end of anything. Turner wasn't going to suddenly change who he was. Some students wouldn't either. Rooms like that didn't transform overnight. But she wasn't trying to change the whole building. She was carving space for herself inside it. And for anyone who came after her. Anyone who had ever walked into a room and felt the temperature shift before they even sat down. She wasn't just solving equations. She was rewriting the expectations that had been stacked against her. One problem, one moment, one room at a time. She pushed open the doors leading outside. Cool afternoon air brushed against her face. The kind that woke you up and cleared whatever fog was left from the day. For the first time in a long time, Maya didn't just feel like she belonged. She felt like she had claimed something. Something no one could take from her. But the day wasn't finished with her yet. Behind her, in that massive lecture hall, Grant Turner was still staring at the board. Still looking at her solution. Still trying to understand how she had done it so cleanly. So confidently. And he wasn't the only one watching her more closely now. Maya made it halfway down the steps outside the building when she heard someone call her name. Not loud, not urgent, but clear enough to make her stop. She turned. A girl with glasses tucked behind her ears jogged up, clutching a notebook to her chest. Her name was Emma. Quiet in class. Always watching, never speaking unless absolutely required. "You were incredible in there," Emma said, cheeks flushed from the rush. "I've never seen anyone shut Turner down like that. And not just shut him down. You made him look slow." Maya shook her head gently. "I didn't do anything to him. I just solved the problem." Emma let out a short breath, somewhere between a laugh and disbelief. "That's exactly why people are talking about you." Maya felt a stretch of silence settle between them. One that came not from awkwardness, but curiosity. Emma adjusted her notebook against her hip. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "How did you see the shortcut? I stared at that first problem for 10 minutes and didn't even notice half the patterns you spotted right away." Maya thought for a moment. Most people assumed she carried answers like a secret weapon. But that wasn't how math worked for her. It wasn't a shortcut, she said. It was just the part that made sense first. Sometimes the long method is the distraction, not the solution. Emma nodded slowly, her eyes widening as the idea clicked. "That's actually kind of brilliant." Maya gave a small smile before continuing down the walkway. Emma kept pace beside her. Behind them, the math building doors opened. A small group of students stepped out, talking loudly enough that Maya couldn't help hearing snippets. She broke it down faster than Turner could think. "I swear I'm studying whatever method she used. She's on a different level." Emma's eyes flickered toward Maya, almost checking for a reaction. Maya kept walking. She didn't need to listen. Not when she'd spent years tuning out comments far worse than anything said today. But something was different this time. These weren't doubts. They weren't cheap jokes or whispered judgments. They were acknowledgments. And Maya didn't need them. But she wasn't going to pretend they didn't shift something small inside her. At the courtyard's edge, Emma slowed to a stop. "Well," she said softly, "if Turner tries something again, you know half the class is on your side now." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Are they?" Emma's smile grew. "Absolutely. No one in there is forgetting what you did today." Maya thanked her before heading toward the library lawn. Emma waved once and turned back toward the building, still replaying the board in her mind. Maya walked across the grass, letting the breeze cool her skin. The sun cast long shadows across the field. Some students lounged under trees. Others hurried to their next class. Normal campus life carried on as if she hadn't just shaken a foundation someone else had built long before she arrived. Her phone buzzed again. Joy. Group chat says Turner hasn't left the lecture hall. He's probably still staring at the board like it insulted him. Maya laughed quietly, typing back. Maya, if he wants to check the steps again, he can take a picture. Joy. He would. He's stubborn enough to frame it on his wall as motivation. Maya rolled her eyes, but couldn't deny the image was funny. Grant Turner staring at her solution for the rest of the week, trying to find a flaw that didn't exist. But as she put her phone away, a new thought surfaced. One she hadn't expected. One that made her stop in the middle of the path. If she could solve that second problem in front of dozens of people with all that pressure, what else could she do? What else had she been holding back because she was too busy trying to survive the expectations around her? The idea opened like a door she didn't realize she'd been standing in front of for years. Someone cleared their throat behind her. She turned to see a group of 3 students approaching. 2 boys and a girl, all carrying notebooks. Hey, one of them said, lifting a hand awkwardly. We didn't mean to bother you. We were wondering if you could explain that factoring trick you did. The one in the middle of the second problem. Maya narrowed her eyes slightly. You want me to tutor you? No, the girl said quickly. Not tutor. Just show us how you saw the pattern. The boy stepped forward. We're not trying to copy your work. It's just, that was the first time math looked like something a person could shape instead of something that shapes you. Maya stared at them for a long moment. The sincerity in their eyes wasn't fake. They weren't looking for shortcuts. They were chasing understanding. She nodded once. All right, walk with me. The 3 students followed her across the lawn as she explained the idea in simple steps. No showing off. No proving anything. Just breaking down the structure so they could see the problem through her eyes. They nodded along, asked questions, scribbled notes. And the whole time, something subtle grew in the air. Not admiration. Not praise. Trust. The kind that didn't come from a single moment of brilliance, but from real connection. Real understanding. By the time they thanked her and headed off, the sun had dipped lower, casting long stripes of light across the grass. Maya breathed in. Slow, steady, clear. This day had started with doubt and whispers. It wasn't ending that way. Not even close. Maya crossed the far side of the lawn when she noticed someone leaning against the brick wall near the science fountain. Arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes locked on her like he had been waiting. Grant Turner. He pushed himself off the wall as she approached, his expression unreadable but heavy enough to make a few nearby students pause and glance over. Maya, he said, not Miss Reed. Her first name. He had never used it before. She stopped a few feet away, steady and calm, because she refused to shrink in front of him. Not after today. Grant studied her face with the same focus he'd used on her solution, as if trying to find the missing variable he couldn't solve. You caught the class by surprise, he said. His voice was controlled, but there was something underneath it. A crack, a shift, a recognition he hadn't planned on giving. Did I? Maya said. You did. He paused. You caught me by surprise as well. Maya didn't respond. She wasn't going to fill this silence for him. He exhaled slowly. The method you used, he said. I haven't seen many students attempt it. Even fewer execute it without collapsing somewhere along the way. That doesn't mean it's wrong, Maya said. I never said it was wrong, but he had implied it. He had leaned on it. He had waited for it to fall apart. Grant looked away for a moment, toward the path stretching across campus. His voice softened just barely. You should know, he said, I push students because the world will push them harder. I expect a lot because I know where this field takes people. It's not easy. And the ones who can't handle pressure usually don't make it far. Maya watched him quietly. She knew this speech. She had heard it from coaches, mentors, teachers who believed toughness came only from breaking people down first. Is that what today was? She said. A test. He hesitated before answering. Yes. And what were you trying to see? He met her eyes again. Something uncertain flickered there. Something that wasn't arrogance for once. If you would bend, he said, or if you would hold. Maya let the words hang in the air, not because she needed time to understand them, but because she wanted him to see that she didn't take them lightly. I didn't bend, she said. No, he said quietly. You didn't. A silence stretched between them. Not hostile, not warm. Something between two people who had seen each other clearly for the first time. Finally, Grant stepped back. When the exam comes, he said, I expect you to show the same precision. Trust me, Maya said. I'll be fine. Something like a smile twitched at the corner of his mouth. Not full, not certain, but real enough to be noticeable before he turned and walked away. Maya watched him disappear into the building, his posture different than before. Less rigid, more thoughtful. When she turned back toward campus, she found a handful of students watching her from a distance. Not judging, not doubting, just watching. The girl from earlier, Emma, lifted a hand in a small wave. A few others nodded as she passed. One student whispered to his friend, but this time it wasn't about whether she belonged. It was about how she changed the room. Maya walked slowly, letting the weight of the day settle the way dust settles after something breaks. Because something had broken today. But not her. Never her. It was the assumptions people carried. The expectations they wore like armor. The limits they placed on others without ever checking if they were real. She reached the campus gates as the sky turned gold. The kind of gold that makes everything look softer, even the edges of a long day. Her phone buzzed again. Joy. So, hero of the math building. Everyone's talking about you. How does it feel? Maya typed as she walked. Maya, it feels like the beginning. Joy. Beginning of what? Maya paused, looked back toward the building, toward the room where she had stood in front of a crowd that expected her to fall. And she hadn't just stood. She had risen. Maya, the beginning of people finally seeing me the way I've always seen myself. Joy. So, you made history in that room today. Maya, not history. A crack, just big enough for the next person to step through. She sent the message and slipped her phone into her pocket. As she walked down the sidewalk, past the rows of trees and the hum of students heading home, she felt something in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. Not relief, not pride, not victory, freedom. Because she hadn't just solved a problem. She hadn't just outshined a professor. She hadn't just changed a classroom. She had changed the way she carried herself through a world that demanded she shrink first and prove herself second. And she would never shrink again. She walked on with steady steps, knowing that the next challenge would come, knowing that some people would still doubt her, knowing that she would have to earn respect again and again. But she also knew something else, something far more important. She didn't need permission to be brilliant. She didn't need approval to excel. She didn't need validation to take up space. She only needed herself. And that was enough. The campus lights switched on one by one behind her. The day was ending. Her momentum was not. If you've ever been underestimated, forgotten, or pushed aside, remember this. Your talent is louder than their doubt. Your work speaks louder than their assumptions. Your brilliance is yours whether they see it or not. Keep going. Keep pushing. Keep rising. Because one day, without warning, you will walk into a room that wasn't built for you. And you'll walk out having changed it forever.